It is Tall Live. It's Neil Atkinson. It is Melia. It's Emma Sanders and Dan Morgan. My voice has just gone funny for literally no reason there, but we will persevere because we are indeed live. If you're enjoying this live, you'll be absolutely stunned to see that we're early for once. 8 minutes early, the Anfield Wrap this week. What an 8 minutes it'll be with Adam, with Emma, and with Dan. Everything to look forward to, especially now that my voice has most definitely returned. Coming up, we've got John Gibbons speaking to Sean McGregor from St George's Hall on their Eurovision plans, and I'm talking to Kieran Molyneux about his new single. If you're listening to this and enjoying it as a podcast, as a video, and as a live, though, we'll be getting stuck into matters arising from the press conference and talking about Liverpool coming up against Leeds United and the fact that Liverpool haven't scored a goal away from home against the current bottom 10, and the fact that that situation obviously has to change very, very soon indeed. But we will be asking why. We'll start off with the press conference, though, and matters arising from that. And Adam Melia, we'll do the liner first because I really do feel like sense has prevailed. I love the idea of this Zoom. I just think some things in life you've just got to find a way to say, can we just crack on and not get bogged down in them? I couldn't quite work out what restorative justice was ever going to be for Liverpool off the back of it anyway. And I'm all right with the concept of just pointing and laughing.
I think it's just quite funny. I think I can't quite get on board with any kind of serious rage about it, but it's obviously a certain thing, and they can't say it is that thing.
Yes.
Which is funny. And you know, if it had been the other way round, I imagine things may have been slightly different. So that's quite funny. There's something very much. There's a large whiff of the police about this. Everything I think about it makes me think about about the police force, whatever we would call them as a body. Yeah. So in general, yeah, I completely agree. Sense has prevailed, and there's not really anything else that that you would do in terms of punishing this young officer. Part of it is that he just looks like every single policeman I've ever seen.
Yeah, he's beating the bill.
His reaction to it as well. I think his reaction to it is the thing that makes it funny too, because if you or I accidentally elbowed somebody, or not accidentally, if we elbowed somebody in a fit of pique, there's a way that we would react, and then there is a way that we would react if we were in the police. I don't know. There's just something about it that makes you realise. Yeah, that's what I think, and so you go on.
No, I was going to go over to Dan, but go on. What do you want to?
Well, you're completely right. You're completely right. That is, sense has absolutely prevailed, and it just tickles me. It just does tickle me a bit about what about what would have happened if it had been the other way around. So yeah, go on.
That is always the valid point, Dan. I just love the idea of this soon, Dan Morgan, where I really hope someone used the sentence, one of them, at some point during the Zoom, one way or the other. Someone had to say one of them. It's one of them somewhere had to drop in there. I love the idea of the Zoom. I like the fact that it gets resolved with a chat. I genuinely do. I think it reflects well on everyone involved, that you're able just to have a bit of a conversation and be able to say one of them. And at some point, maybe someone's also said, draw a line under the matter. I like the idea that these are the words that are getting used through this conversation, through this Zoom.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the surroundings it was in, you'd imagine the phrase "we'd all had a drink" might have been thrown in there as well.
We're all Reds.
We'd all had a pint. Things just got out of hand. Yeah, I'm very much with you two on this. I think it gets, like everything in football, it gets tainted, doesn't it, by the sort of whataboutery and the tribalism. So we can all go, oh, this happens every week, and doesn't seem to be punished elsewhere, and. You've got Roy Keane acting holier than now on the matter on telly, which is
just unreal.
In itself, unreal.
More front and rapid hardware.
The current climate is funny, though. Like, there is literally a current climate of be nice to the officials, and one of them's elbowed a player. I don't know. It is just really funny.
Yeah, but I mean, I think there is something in this as well, though, isn't it, Adam? Whereby, you think about the Respect campaign and how that just died a slow and painful death, what seems like many years ago now. And again, the thing that brings in the tribalism and whataboutery is that there is a problem with how, people lose the rag with officials, with how, they get screamed at by, by supporters is one thing, but in their faces at times by players from across the league, and I think that is, I'm not saying it's about time someone snapped. I'm not taking that type of weird line that's been trotted about.
No, only people who write for the Times to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's it's not before timeline is just phenomenal in itself. Like, I've got a hot take on this. Was definitely the pitch that Monday morning. But I do think there is a problem there. But I think more than anything, I'm just interested in the concept of like themes in football and how this has become its own theme in recent weeks. It probably does start with Bruno Fernandes at Anfield. There's the mad Fulham United Cup game in the middle of that, and then this becomes part of that. So, like everything in football, like time wasting, like, head injuries, like everything else, these things seem to just spiral in very short periods. And, I think this is probably, it might not be the last we see in terms of this type of thing, but I think it was definitely a one-off. It was definitely unique.
It was a one-off, Emma, and that's why I think the point and laugh ending of this is just got to be, like, I don't care whether or not he's a linesman somewhere else this. I wouldn't necessarily be that up for the idea of him being Liverpool's linesman this weekend. Don't get me wrong, but apart from that, I don't care whether or not he's a linesman somewhere this weekend. I don't care whether or not he's a linesman somewhere the weekend after, and so on and so forth. The idea that he was meant to, his job's on the line or something like that, all just felt really, really unnecessarily OTT on the one hand. And then when people were sort of trying to lash in, like Robertson had done something completely outrageous on the other, and the whole thing just needed. And it's quite rare these days in football you're able to look at a situation and go, the sting's been taken out of something, but it feels like the sting's been taken out of something.
Yeah, like in all seriousness, we have dealt with the situation really well. Like you say, it was one of those that was getting blown up on social media, and actually, I just found it really funny. I remember seeing one comment of somebody saying that the referee had got scared because he'd heard like feet sort of running behind him, realised it was Robertson, and then apparently because he was scared of Robertson, he lashed out, and that was why he elbowed him, which I just thought was absolutely hilarious. Because I thought, imagine if he thinks that about Robertson, like, if it was like Eric Cantona back in the day, what would he have done? Turn around and like, bicycle kicked him or something. So I just thought like it was getting completely blown out of proportion. And as you say, I think it's actually been really, really, well dealt with. And I've just seen, in the comment section there, somebody saying that, it might actually kind of favour Robertson, the fact that he has just kind of let it go, and hopefully officials will sort of take that on board.
I love Emma, the video of it where Robertson's trying to explain to his teammates what's just happened. Yeah. Like, you can lip read, genuinely lip read every word of him saying he's just elbowed me on the nose, which is such a funny thing to say in the context. And they must have been thinking, what? Absolutely not. That's mad. He's trying to explain. He's just elbowed me on the nose, and he's saying it so emphatically. It's so funny.
Well, that's it, because I was actually live texting the game, and obviously because I'm in the middle of typing stuff, I didn't see the full thing at half time, and obviously the camera's cut out until you saw the replay. So when I was live texting it, I think I'd put something in that Robertson had a bit of a coming together, but actually all the frantic chatting and stuff afterwards was more him just trying to get his teammates in the dressing room. I think there was like a part where he was chatting away to Trent. So I was like being all serious, saying, "Oh yeah, he's trying to get Trent back in the changing rooms because Liverpool have got work to do," kind of thing. And then it turned out he was just telling him that the linesman's just smashed him in the nose. So not quite being 2-0 down to Arsenal, but it was the whole situation was just mad, wasn't it? But as you say, it's been dealt with, and it's very much one of them. Move on.
All right, move on. He moves on during his press conference, Dan, and he talks about the Bellingham situation. He doesn't talk about it that explicitly. He talks about the idea of you've got to work within limitations. He was obviously going to be asked a question around it, and he seemed, I thought, relatively relaxed and prepared for the question. Which again, I mean, the bit on all of this I keep coming back to, Dan, is the whole thing just seems really odd to me around timing. That is the bit of it that just sort of keeps happening to me over and over again. It seems very odd around timing, unless there has been some sort of story that was about to break or is going to get out of control. That's the bit of this that I'm just still quite confused by.
It is very odd around timing because, the thing I said in my column today was that, Liverpool haven't pulled out of a race. They've pulled out of a watch party. And that doesn't constitute a sort of dramatic briefing that the club obviously gave to the national and patch journalists around, and in any kind of interest in Jude Bellingham. Ultimately, I think the truth will become transparent in what happens to Bellingham, as basic as that sounds, but that includes him potentially staying at Dortmund. I think there's a world in where him staying.
That was one of the interesting sentences in some of the pieces. I thought that suddenly came from not quite from nowhere. It's been hinted at a couple of times. Dortmund might want to do a new transfer, might want to do a new contract, but there was that sort of this is a live thing that people think is it for the first time, rather than something that Dortmund might quite like to see happen.
But there's also a world in where him staying at Dortmund for another few months or a year benefits Liverpool. If they feel like they can't get the deal done now, but then maybe in future feel like, in another transfer window they can maybe get it over the line, then you just don't know. You do not know. I think ultimately, from what we hear about Jude Bellingham and what he wants for the next part of his career, there's a lot of people who say that seems to rule him out of, joining a Real Madrid or a Manchester City just yet. He really wants the journey. He wants the story of the next move. He wants to feel part of something. If that's the case and he can't go to Liverpool, then he should go to Newcastle, to be honest. That's the best case you can make for another story club right now, another journey club. And they can afford him. So, and no one wants that. No one wants to see that happen. So I think ultimately, we'll be defined by what actually happens to the player. And I still think moving to Liverpool is on that table. I still think that that's a possible thing. I think the manager was avoidant in his press conference, certainly in the part that we got to see. There's some rumours going around that the embargo got a bit tasty again. But he was avoidant. He was keen to shut it down. That doesn't really tell us anything other than the fact that what's been said has been said and what's been briefed has been briefed. And that for me, I still believe Liverpool are very much in this personally until fact tells me otherwise.
The other part of it, Emma, has came out was this list of names, and the list has been a couple of names that have been around for a while, and then there's one or two which are a bit like, if Liverpool are genuinely interested in that footballer, why hasn't that happened yet? Or that could have happened. I think a really good example is, for me, Tielemans is just wild, and having seen the way Liverpool play when they play against Yuri Tielemans, to me, they look like they target him. They look like they've got a game plan for him, and so that's suddenly dropped on there. The list is just. It just all feels very, very convenient. So yeah, there's some names that we feel as though could be said around Liverpool and around players who are sort of available. I don't know. I think that the Mason Mount thing always looked like it's legitimate from a Liverpool point of view. I'd be amazed if Declan Rice doesn't end up at Arsenal, because I think it just makes sense for everyone. But he's now sort of dipped in there as well, wherever that's come from. The convenient list is something else about this, which just sort of makes me go, that's all a bit odd.
Yeah, it's one of those where I'm trying to make sure I don't say anything that was in the embargo section of the press conference here. But I do think that the list, as you say, it's convenient in that I think there's only a certain, number of midfielders that are probably going to be available, affordable for Liverpool in this transfer window. If we're going by, the story, which is that they can't afford Bellingham, then they've clearly got a price cap. And then there's a list which you can pluck out, which I think anyone could sort of do. And it includes those players that are on it, the ones that you just mentioned, especially the likes of sort of, Declan Rice and Mason Mount. They're really, really obvious ones, given obviously the English Premier League link as well. And I think it's, let's say there's 15 to 20 names and you go, okay, who can Liverpool afford? All of these. Would they go there? Yeah, probably. Would it be a step up for them? Yeah, probably. Do they kind of fit the model? Yeah, you can see how they do. Let's add them to the list. And I think that's basically the extent of it. I'm sure there might be one or two players in that who, for me, Mason Mount, I think probably would be quite a good signing. But I do think on the face of it, it is a case of, well, Jude Bellingham is the one that everyone wants. It's the one that Liverpool wants. It's, as people have said, I think it's the one that Jude wanted. But if you can't get him, is there anyone really that's kind of on that level or who can give what he can, the argument probably is no. So therefore, you then are stuck to a list, which these names pretty much are. So yeah, not much of it really excites me, because I think if there's an obvious position which needs dealing with, which it is midfield, then I think a club like Liverpool should be going for the absolute best. But instead, it looks like they're settling for three of the non-absolute best, but who might just fill a few holes in a position that needs filling.
The absolute best part, I think, Adam, is the key issue. And it's been clear Liverpool, the manager himself, views this player as the absolute best. That's where 12 months ago he's making crystal clear, or 8 months ago, that's what he thinks, that this could be the one that he feels is the absolute best, and that's why, if everything that's being reported is legitimate, and I still think in football you've always got to go with ifs and this stuff, because you don't get to watch this stuff, and that's why I find it quite difficult to talk about at times, because of the sort of the vagaries of it. You're left sort of trying to read the weather as much as the idea of actually say what the weather is. You're constantly like a human trying to sort of say whether or not it'll be raining in 2 hours, and whilst in Liverpool right now the answer is absolutely definitely, there is still there's still a feeling you're never quite sure. I'm of the view that you've still got to sort of see where it ends up. But the point about this was Liverpool had made all the noises, like they'd worked out who, as far as they were concerned, the best one was. The football world was pretty much in agreement with them. So to now, for instance, say we're not that sure about whether or not we're going to go for the best one, or we're not going to go for the best one, that's what sticks in the craw, Adam.
Yeah, I think as things stand, they've made themselves look very foolish, and I'm with you, to be honest, Neil, and I've fluctuated with this over the years. I enjoy the transfer sport. It's like a different thing, isn't it? It's not the football that you watch on the pitch. It's a different sort of game. The transfers. It's quite fun. It's quite diverting. But I can see where you're coming from, where you say it's that you've got issues with it. Can you still hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry, I've got a warning up to say something's gone wrong. But at the minute, I just think that it feels like we've sort of been hoodwinked into this jam tomorrow situation, where we're constantly thinking, instead of thinking, oh dear, we've not got anybody with playing Milner in a midfield three in November again. We're like, I'm speaking about myself. It's all right though, because there is a plan. There's jam coming tomorrow. And I just think that if this is, we've never had Bellingham. To be honest, I've never heard of him, as I said on the last week's show. I don't know who this fella is. So we've never had him. We may not get him. Nothing's changed. We just can't have, and this is why somebody noticed me shaking my head before. I wasn't shaking my head in rage at anything anybody on the show was saying. It's just the idea, I guess, of him. Of us being buoyed by the idea that he stays another year at Dortmund, and we're doing this again in April.
Absolutely
2024.
not. No.
Come on, like it's just you're writing off years of your life waiting for things to happen, and I feel like this has been going on a while now. And to be honest, not when I say a while, I reckon probably Naby Keita. We signed him. We waited for him for a year. There was other things going on. We waited for Virgil for a year. Sorry, half a year, and that one worked out fine. But I just feel like we need to stop this. Like this needs to. We need to live in the now a little bit. I don't know who I'm talking to, other than myself. But like so I'm not essentially bothered by whether we get the one player, and I understand if we're saying we need more than that, because I think we do. We can't just put all our eggs in one basket. And if the player's going to cost 150 million quid, you're saying that is pretty much all our money. It makes sense to me to say let's spread that around, especially if things seem to have cooled or it's gone in a different direction. You can see the logic behind it. I just can't have it. I just can't have this again. I just can't. We can't keep doing this. We can't keep doing jam tomorrow, and we can't have Milner lining up in a midfield three in November 2023.
It is the come back to you, Dan, to wrap it up. It is the. I'll go back to the list, because I think the list is part of why you're left going. The list just doesn't look full of ideas. It doesn't look full of freshness. It looks like a list that I could do in 15 minutes in the pub, and go, there you are. There's some footballers. I mean, I think there might be something in Sucic with a release clause, possibly. There could be something around that feels as though it's got a bit of legitimacy around it, but it doesn't feel like the sort of a lot of the little left field bits that have brought Liverpool to the party either. You know, it just very much does feel as though you're dealing with second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth in the list arrangements part of it, and that's one of the reasons why the whole thing at face value felt very, very underwhelming.
Yeah, but I mean that's sort of what Liverpool have, indirectly come out and said, isn't it? That, for the 120 million that is being touted, we need to go out and get 3 players at 40, and that's ultimately the business that we have to do now. And I think we're in that. Then I think it does rule out, or it should rule out, the higher premium Premier League players. Then, I think if we go anywhere near McAllister or Declan Rice for upwards of 70 million, I'll be absolutely livid. Because of the Bellingham factor within that. I'd expect us to have at least one sort of Fabinho-like transfer that no one's seen coming in there. You think with the scouting that they've had all along, they should be able to pick out, you mentioned Sucic there. I think there's a lad at Monaco similar to Fabinho, Yusuf Fofana. I really like someone like that just coming out of left field and on June 1st suddenly going, we've signed this lad. Here you go. There's one. And I can understand, I get some of the links around sort of Mount in particular, Gallagher, because of the situation at Chelsea, but I just think Liverpool going 80 million upwards on players who essentially are nowhere near as generational a talent as Jude Bellingham is, and who have already got a really big premium on them because of where they play anyway.
Yeah.
That just makes no sense to me at all. I wouldn't understand what we're doing there. It would smack of living in the now, and it's all right. Again, it's all right for us to all be sitting here like the dog that caught the car with this Bellingham news and saying we told you so and not knowing what happens next. But the club have to have a plan. They have to have a way forward.
It makes the club look look boneheaded.
It looks very summer 2014, doesn't it? It looks.
It looks like the summer 2023.
Well, yeah.
I mean 2022. It's the other shoe landing after the kind of Artur day or the Klopp changing his mind day, isn't it? This is. I think people are annoyed because it's like, okay, we're very annoyed about that. That was awful. That thing that happened in the summer. However, there is something that might say that there's sense, there's meaning behind it, and this is the other shoe landing, and the club just look like boneheads at the minute. They need to do something about that.
There you are.
Also, but Neil, sorry, very quick point. We've got no sporting director come 31st of May either.
Yeah.
So what are we doing with this to-do list that we've got when a fella who we haven't even hired yet sits down, unpacks his box and puts a picture of his wife and kids on his desk? What are we doing there? We're not giving him this to-do list that we've got. These deals need doing now. And I'm not having that we've kept Julian Ward around on gardening leave, doing nothing. Because you might as well just get rid of him in November if that's the case. People need to be doing these deals now because we haven't got a sporting director come this summer.
There we are. Absolutely. Coming up, we've got John Gibbons and Sean McGregor from St George's Hall on their Eurovision plans. And I'm talking to Kieran Molyneux about his new single as well. That is all to come. If you are listening to this as a podcast, that will be starting now. But if you're enjoying TAW Live as a live experience, and why wouldn't you? We are back, and Emma Sanders, Liverpool have not scored a goal away from home against the current bottom 10. That, to me, is beyond the idea of a bad season. I've seen bad seasons. I've seen Liverpool have bad seasons. I know what bad seasons look like. So tell me why Liverpool haven't scored a goal against the current bottom 10?
Oh, it's the golden question, isn't it? And I think, there's definitely not one answer. I think there's several factors that go into it. I think one is the fact that clearly, I know this is an obvious one, and a 5-year-old playing FIFA can probably tell you this one, but Liverpool's midfield is just nowhere near good enough to be able to control games these days. So I think when you're coming up against teams sort of in the bottom 10 that sit back in a block, and you need a midfield to really set the tempo and dominate and have a sort of a level of authority, I don't think we've really got that anymore. I think that's one thing. I think another thing...
But Emma, they did do that for 60 minutes against the league leaders. And that's where this is my sort of why is that, they've scored 7 against Manchester United at home. There's this list of things. They do that for 60 minutes, 50 minutes against the league leaders. And that's why I keep coming back to the why, because if they can do that for 50 minutes against the league leaders. I'm not asking for a complete 90-minute performance. You know, they do it for the first 25 minutes away at Newcastle. I'm not asking for a complete performance. It's staggering that they haven't managed to do it and see the ball end up in the back of the net away from home against any of the current bottom 10.
Yeah, and I take your point about them doing it against Arsenal and obviously other sort of teams in that top 6. But like, I think when I look at it, I see obviously teams that are better footballing teams will obviously change their shape to work to their strengths as opposed to trying to nullify Liverpool's, because obviously they're going out to win because they're good enough to go out to win. So their system isn't designed to stop Liverpool. Whereas then you come up against teams in the bottom 10 and their system is purely designed to stop Liverpool. And I think that's where the midfield have a problem, because they're not good enough to adapt to those situations. They're not good enough to control teams. So they're good enough to control, as you say, like a half an hour or either 60 minutes or obviously against Man United, you know, the full 90. But that's when they're not playing against a team that are designed to stop them. So, you know, and there will be times where that will happen. And I think, you know, that'll just be where it always seems to happen with Chelsea, where the systems just clash and neither team can score a goal. Every time Liverpool-Chelsea, it's a shit game. But I find when you're coming up against teams like Arsenal, especially City, because Liverpool have always had City's number, it's because they're more worried about themselves. And therefore, you know, they're trying to play towards their strengths, and that leaves gaps, which Liverpool have been able to take advantage of. And I think that's the frustrating thing, is that clearly when everything is working, and when Liverpool's system is working, and the players individually are performing at the highest level, it all comes off. But I think the problem with Jurgen Klopp's football, and it's great when it works, and clearly there's been a lot of success, definitely wouldn't change it for the world. But my argument would be the problem is if one thing isn't quite working, or one or two players aren't quite at their level, then the whole thing falls apart. And I think this is where the bottom teams are able to take a bit of advantage, because it's not, the onus isn't on them to play the football. The onus is on Liverpool to play the football. And if they can't, then that's it. It's game over. And, you know, those bottom clubs can then have, you know, it's just one set piece or one long ball. And Liverpool have sort of, you know, that's it. It's gone.
Dan, do you feel as though that's been a massive part of the issue? Do you think there's something that's built up psychologically over a period of time? Do you think there's been a psychological shortcoming from the outset? What do you think it is?
I think that's a massive thing. I think we've been lulled into a false sense of control in these games away to the bottom 10. You know, I think the idea that who's picking who off has been skewed. I think Liverpool have got themselves into a mindset where, you know, they feel like they're just biding their time, but most often, you know, it's the opposition who feel like they're quite comfortable in the game and also feel like they can get the other side. And I just think, you know, I think we know Liverpool have been mentally fatigued this season. I think that's shown in their build-up, in the spaces they've left between lines. You know, the idea that Liverpool will always give you one, they'll always give you a chance. You know, they'll always let you in if you just cheat a little bit with high and wide wingers, staying up the other side of when they've got the ball. So, you know, I think the idea that Liverpool have always had intensity is true under this manager. But, you know, I think people forget they often had to bring a lot of intensity to those games against the bottom 10 because, you know, they were games that were naturally not intense by their very nature because, you know, teams didn't want to engage with them and especially didn't want to hide at home. So without bringing that and without and with trying to gamify it a little bit, which I think is the other thing that Liverpool have done this season.
Really
I think they tried to move themselves onto a level of Man City-esque sort of gamifying. That hasn't really worked for a number of different reasons. But, you know, it's sort of been, maybe you can argue it's the right thing, wrong time to try and do that. But, you know, I just think there's a culmination of factors, not to mention how we've been quite negligent tactically throughout the season in a number of different ways, I think.
Adam, building on what has been said there by Emma and Dan around the sort of the tactical aspects, there's something else as well, which is also just missing chances at times. Yeah. I mean, the reason why they haven't scored against Bournemouth is they miss a pen. You know, Van Dijk has a great chance at Nottingham Forest away, for instance, another game that finishes 1-0 against Liverpool, and he chooses to nod it back across goal. You know, that there is a thing here where Liverpool have just been quite literally bad in front of goal in these games, and that's just got to change with the remainder of the season left.
Yeah, and I would say, especially in the first 20 minutes of these games, which seems to be that's when the chances have come. In a few of these dreadful away fixtures, I can't remember a chance for the entire second halves. I think there is, to touch on the mentality thing first off, I think there is a sense that we are too comfortable, too casual, too much swagger. I'm not quite sure which one it is, but then that coupled with wastefulness, lack of clinical finishing from everybody except Salah, and even at times Salah. But I wouldn't put anything on Mo's head, because he's been the only one who stood up at all, really, in our strike force in previous years in tougher ways. You've seen similar patterns of play, and then Jota or Mane have just popped up and made it 1-0 at some point, and that is a huge thing that we've been missing. That you can't really, because of the way those two players score goals, often they would either just make it happen or just hit it, which is just it's something that you can't sort of always bubble down to the complete science behind it. So yeah, there is an extremely different thing that happens when you can go 1-0 up, when you can feel like you can go 1-0 up, when you feel like you can miss a chance and still have a chance in a game. Because then the other thing that happens after all of those factors that I've just mentioned, us missing chances, having a bit too much casualness and too much composure, I don't know, too much swagger, is then the other thing that happens mentally is that the other team have scored on 20 minutes and blind panic, and then hating each other, and then just very slowly the realization dawning on everybody watching, and seemingly the players also, that we're not going to score here. So yeah, I think probably if there is one thing that you would say, that probably people make too much of mentality in football. It is a big thing, and momentum's a big thing, but scoring goals it just makes everything seem different. And you can be as crap as you like, but if you've scored, it doesn't really matter. Sometimes you just won 1-0 instead of drawing 0-0. And so I think you see teams digging themselves out of crap runs all the time just by the fact that they've scored. And you say, well, they haven't played well for weeks. It seems like sort of thing we've been saying about Man United a few times actually this season. They're playing crap, but Rashford scored. And then eventually they're not playing crap anymore. They're winning games, and Rashford scored. So it is probably the biggest thing. And I'm, there's some big signings there that haven't done what we needed them to do. And we probably we shouldn't have been in such a desperate situation, really, and that we needed them to be so good so quickly. But we are where we are.
Leeds, and the moment they find themselves in, Emma. I mean, it's the moment they find themselves in is the moment that Bournemouth find themselves in, and they've got Spurs this weekend. United go to Forest, which I think now looks like a really trappy fixture for United, given the injury issues and the pressure around the Sevilla game. We've got Leeds. I think what those other sides have done well, though, this season, I mean, Tottenham ride all the luck in the world against Brighton, is they don't lose their minds if one or two things go wrong, whereas Liverpool have done that. Now, what I would say is it looks like Leeds did that last weekend against Palace. Absolutely lost their minds after conceding a goal just before half-time and then get whacked 5-1. They were good against Forest and looked like a football team, but Liverpool should have more than enough for them on paper, as per usual, with all the caveats of the way things have been.
Yeah, and the thing with Leeds is that I guess the caveat is they're good. They're used to having mad seasons. They're used to being completely inconsistent. So one week they can lose 5-1, the next week they can win 4-1. I think they're used to that, and that's why I don't think it rattles them really, because they are one of those teams. It's very much like kind of Brendan Rodgers' Liverpool 2014, where it's just let's score more than the other team. And I do think it is like that a lot of the time when you play against Leeds. But yeah, you're right. Liverpool should have enough. It's still quite a young Leeds team. Yeah, they have got a lot of talent. They've got some really, I think, good attacking players up front that can cause problems. They've obviously got, the attacking fullbacks as well. But I think this is one of those where it plays into Liverpool's favour in a way, because Leeds are so erratic in the way that they play.
And they've sort of got to play football, Emma. The thing you were arguing before about what sides are done to Liverpool and what Dan was suggesting as well. I feel a bit like Leeds are still in a situation where they've got to play football. They've got to be intense. They've got to be aggressive, and that could play for Liverpool as well.
100%. And that's kind of what I mean by like the fact that they're quite erratic, is that they do have to come out and they do leave gaps. They do leave spaces. They don't really control games. They don't really necessarily suffocate teams. They might have 5 minutes where they get, a couple of chances and they might knock in a few corners, but they don't have half an hour spells where they really feel like kind of on top and the pressure's building that you might get from like a Brighton side, for example. I think Liverpool's hand. The main factor is that it's at Elland Road, really. I think if it was at Anfield, I think it would be, more of a comfortable story. But yeah, Liverpool should still have enough.
Dan, I'll come to you on it. Pick me a team. I presume allowing 4. He said that Canate hadn't trained, but expected him to today. He said Alisson as well, but it's Monday, the game. So I'm going to presume both of them are in. I'm going to say the back 4 will be Trent Alexander-Arnold, Andy Robertson, Canate, and Virgil van Dijk. I'm going to say one of Fabinho and Henderson starts, but perhaps not both. Mo Salah starts. Fill the gaps.
It's interesting, isn't it? We've suddenly got 5 players for 2 forward positions now that Luis Diaz is fit.
He suggested in his press conference he couldn't see how he'd do more than 30. Though,
yeah, totally. So. But still, if you want to get him that 30, then you're considering your options then left. I think I feel like we need a performance from Darwin Núñez. I think he just, even since going back to the United game at home, he's looked a little unfit. So I'm not sure what's gone on there. He's just hasn't looked as robust as maybe he had done from that sort of Christmas to February period. I mean, I would be tempted to go with, if possible, the same midfield against Arsenal. And I'd take Jota out of this one. I'd go Gakpo and Núñez, and then make your subs from there.
Emma?
Yeah, I think I'd go Gakpo and Núñez as well. To be honest, I think I'm the same as that. I just want to get at them really, and just make them feel a bit nervous, like what they did against Palace, and just get at them early. And I'd bring in Thiago as well to start.
You bring in Thiago. Who for though? For Jones or Henderson or Fabinho?
I'd probably say for Jones.
Okay. Yeah. Adam, what are you doing?
I was going to say bring Thiago back if possible as well. So I'll agree with Emma there.
But would you go Thiago back with Fabinho and Henderson? Because that for me is a key question, given the fact that there's been times this season where we've talked about a level of flatness and all that sort of stuff, where it's felt like the 3 of them, it's just not clicked for whatever reason. So what would you do?
I think anything other than that. The problem with Thiago is that it's a diminutive midfielder, and so are you going to say? And I know Jones isn't short, but he is. He's in that category of unphysical midfielders for me. So it's a bit tough, really, to say anything other than that if you want to bring Thiago back. So yeah, basically I am doing them 3, I think.
Okay, and what are you doing up front?
Yeah, same, I think. Yes, Salah, Gakpo, Núñez. Maybe I'm starting Jota actually for Gakpo.
Okay.
Maybe.
Oh,
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm sort of. Yeah, I think it's one of them where they're weirdly, at our worst this season. We've resembled Leeds, but we've got the best goalie in the league, and they've got the worst. So we could do with being we could do with being putting a strong team out and being the adults in the room or whatever.
I can make a strong argument that this could well be a game, if we're going to do the thing where we start with 4, start with Fabinho and Thiago, and then start with 4 forwards. I can make an argument for this one against this Leeds United team in this moment, that this is the one where you do that. But I don't know if that's quite where Liverpool are right now. I think if the season had gone to plan, that's what they'd be doing. Emma, give me a prediction.
2-1.
And what's going to win the Grand National?
There was one in there today. I don't know anything about horses, but somebody sent me a message on WhatsApp saying there was a horse that was something to do with booze. I think it was called Night Out. So
that one, marvelous. Dan, what's going to win the Grand National, and what's the score going to be?
I'll go with Ain't That a Shame, in keeping with Liverpool's season, and I think Liverpool will win 2-0.
Okay, Adam, Melia, the big dog. That's the horse I recommend, not Adam.
Oh yeah, I know. I saw there was one called the Big Dog, and I was thinking about you and Dejan Lovren.
I'm often thinking about me and Dejan Lovren.
Yeah. I like, in terms of names, Velvet Elvis is a good name, so I hope he comes through. I won last year with Noble Yates, so I'll go Noble Yates again.
Are we going to win at Leeds?
I think so, because I just think they're rubbish, and I think the goalie's terrible. So I think we might win 3-0.
Okay, excellent stuff. Andy Heaton producing. We've had Emma Sanders. We've had Dan Morgan. We've had Adam Melia. John Gibbons came on with Sean McGregor. Me with Kieran Molyneux. That's been your tour live. See you.